I never imagined my entire life would pivot because of a simple knock on the door. It was a Thursday. Ordinary. The kind of day where nothing monumental should happen. And yet, as I stood barefoot in my apartment, sipping cheap white wine in a shirt too wrinkled for public, everything I thought I knew shattered into pieces. The knock wasn't expected, and neither was him. There stood Grayson Hale, my boss's husband, holding flowers, dripping wet from the rain, looking at me like he had been here before, because he had. I let the wine slip from my fingers and crashed to the floor. And in that moment, as the glass broke apart at my feet, so did my silence. Let me rewind. 2 weeks earlier, I was just another cog in the towering machine that was North and Remington LLP, one of New York's most ruthless legal firms. I was Marina Whitaker, the client whisperer, the one who made rich men sign dotted lines with closed eyes, the woman who could suit screaming egos into trusting our team with $1 billion lawsuit. And yet, I was invisible, not to clients. Never to clients, but to Claudia Hale, my direct superior, mentor, and supposed champion. I was just Marina. Could you take care of this? With a dismissive wave of her diamond-encrusted hand, Claudia was everything I was expected to become: polished, poised, untouchable. She had it all: the corner office, the partnerships, the champagne press coverage, the designer wardrobe, the yacht in the Hamptons weekends. And Grayson, a man I never looked at twice, until he started looking at me. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't punch you in the face. It poisons you slowly. A question here, a compliment there. The way his hand lingered 1 second too long when we shook hands at Claudia's birthday party. He was magnetic, powerful, and tragically ignored by the woman who built her world with his money. I didn't fall for him. I let myself fall. That's the truth, and it's time I own it. But that night, when he appeared at my door unannounced, wet, wild, and whispering my name like it meant something, it wasn't passion, it was panic. Because this was no longer just some misguided office affair. This was war. I hadn't known then what Claudia was capable of. But she would show me. Oh, she would show me in the most humiliating, brutal way imaginable. And that's when I stopped being her prodigy and became her worst F-king nightmare. The next morning, I woke up with mascara-streaked cheeks and a migraine splitting my temples. The wine stain from the shattered glass was still sticky on my floor, and the vase of flowers Grayson brought sat mockingly on my kitchen counter. I should have thrown them away, but I didn't, because a part of me, a small, venomous part, wanted Claudia to find out. I knew it was wrong. I knew what it made me. But after 3 years of being her shadow, her errand girl in designer heels, I was tired of being stepped on. Claudia Hale had stolen my pitches, hijacked my clients, taken credit for my wins, and smiled while doing it. Grayson? He was just a symptom of a deeper rot. But revenge, the kind that rewires your DNA, doesn't start with rage. It starts with shame. That morning, shame tasted like bile in my throat as I stepped into the elevator at North and Remington, avoiding every mirror, every reflection that dared to remind me of who I had become. My heels clicked too loud against the marble. My blouse felt too tight. The entire office buzzed with that glassy-eyed tension only corporate predators knew how to wear. And then I saw her. Claudia. Perfect. Crisp. A walking PR campaign in a pale blue suit. She didn't even look at me when I passed her. Just kept tapping her phone, sipping her oat milk latte, whispering something into her AirPods, probably about how I needed to tighten up the Benson proposal by noon. And that was it. And no suspicion, no flicker of doubt in her icy blue eyes. She had no idea her husband spent the night at my apartment, that I knew the birthmark on his hip, that his cologne still clung to the inside of my coat like a ghost, but that wouldn't last. The office was a cathedral of secrets, and rumors were hymns passed between interns and assistants like gospel. It was only a matter of time before the choir started singing, and when they did, I'd either be buried or reborn. At 3:14 p.m. that day, Claudia summoned me to her office. I stepped inside, spine straight, hands trembling, mouth rehearsing apologies I hadn't written yet. She turned slowly in her chair and said, "Marina, darling, we need to talk about Grayson." My pulse stopped. She smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was surgical. She already knew. She already knew, and I was walking straight into the guillotine. I didn't sit. She didn't offer. The air between us was thin, brittle like the surface of a frozen lake, moments from cracking under the weight of something inevitable. Claudia leaned back in her designer chair, legs crossed like a queen observing her court jester. "I assume you know why you're here." My lips parted, but nothing came out. She waited, let the silence stretch just long enough to make me squirm. Then, "Grayson's been distracted lately. Meetings missed, deadlines slipping, and last Thursday, he forgot our anniversary." Her eyes pierced mine, a blade hidden behind a smile. "I know men wander," she continued, "but I never thought he'd wander down." I flinched. That line, that venom, it wasn't just rage. It was betrayal soaked in privilege. I could see it in her face. Claudia didn't hate me because I slept with her husband. She hated me because I was beneath her and dared to touch something she owned. "I'm not," I started, but she held up a manicured hand. "Don't embarrass yourself, Marina." My name in her mouth sounded like a warning. She stood, walked slowly around her desk, heels echoing like a ticking clock. When she stopped in front of me, we were almost the same height, except she stood on a pedestal of power I hadn't earned, or so she thought. "You think you've won something," she whispered. "You haven't. You've just signed a contract with the devil and forgot to read the fine print." I met her eyes. For the first time, I didn't look away. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I said. And it was true. Because when shame turns into defiance, it gives birth to something else. Strategy. This wasn't just an affair. This was war. And Claudia? She'd just drawn first blood. I didn't go back to my desk. Not right away. Instead, I stood in the hallway back straight, eyes locked on the glossy office floor, where the reflection of Claudia's door shimmered like a mirage. My heart pounded. Not from fear, but from something else entirely. I wasn't the same woman who walked into that office 10 minutes ago. I was done hiding. Claudia had just handed me a weapon, her assumption that I was weak, disposable. But the thing about people like her, they never see it coming when the mistress decides not to be the side piece, but the story's main villain. Back at my desk, I opened a locked folder on my computer labeled Drafts. Inside, emails, screenshots, call logs. Grayson had been sloppy, and while I hadn't planned to use them, now they were my insurance policy, my leverage. I wasn't just some intern he seduced. I had access. Documents with Claudia's signature on deals that didn't exist. Expense reports that didn't add up. HR complaints that mysteriously disappeared, all traceable to her. I didn't plan to use any of it. Until now. That afternoon, I played it normal, smiled at coworkers, took a meeting, answered emails, but every move I made was calculated. Every word measured. Because when you're trapped in a lion's den, screaming only gets you eaten, but smiling buys you time. Grayson tried calling that night. I let it ring. He texted, "Please don't do anything stupid. I'm handling it." He didn't get it. He thought this was still about him. It wasn't. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a power triangle. And the sharpest point was me. Grayson hadn't just betrayed me. He'd humiliated me. And worst of all, he thought I wouldn't find out. I paced my apartment like a woman possessed. Every room felt too small. Every breath was hot with rage. The same man who used to bring me chamomile tea when I stayed late was now sleeping with my boss and stealing my ideas. But it wasn't just the affair that shattered me. It was the emails I found. Grayson hadn't deleted everything after all. One careless sync, and his private Gmail account loaded onto our shared tablet. I wasn't even snooping, just trying to read the news while eating cereal. But then it pinged, and I saw the name. Claudia Lancaster. There were over 20 messages. My heart sank as I read them. Dates, plans, A shared Google Doc titled Q3 Transition Strategy, with my presentation inside, word for word. The slides I had stayed up until a.m. building from scratch, stolen, repackaged, and sent to Claudia as if they were his. I felt physically ill. And yet, as I scrolled further, something changed. Anger, yes. Betrayal, of course. But beneath it all, clarity. They had crossed a line. And I was done being the good girl. I spent the rest of the weekend doing what I do best, digging. Grayson had always been careless with passwords. And Claudia? She used the same phone passcode as her work laptop. Soon I had access to everything. Emails, texts, Slack messages, even voice notes. The picture became clear. Grayson was leveraging me, using our relationship to extract inside knowledge, subtly feeding it to Claudia, who in turn made herself look like a strategic genius to the board. They were climbing off my back, but they forgot something critical. I climb higher under pressure. And I never forget who pushed me. I was done playing nice. For weeks, I'd been gathering threads loose. Fragile threads of Claudia's carefully curated life. Her reputation, her title, her marriage. And now, finally, they were starting to unravel in my hands. Carter delivered. Like clockwork, an encrypted file arrived in my inbox, hidden behind a boring subject line: Q3 budget notes. Inside were 47 emails. 47. Claudia had been sending confidential company information to a private Gmail address. And guess who owned that address? Grayson. They weren't just sleeping together. They were building something. A backup plan. A new startup maybe, or a corporate move I hadn't seen coming. But what mattered most wasn't what they were planning, it was the betrayal. From both of them, I was the pawn in their perfect little game. The loyal employee they could discard. The friend-turned liability. The woman who wasn't supposed to notice the stolen ideas, the blocked promotions, or the shifting power dynamics. But I noticed. And now I had proof. That evening, I didn't go home. I went to a bar I knew Claudia's husband frequented after work. I'd seen him there before, sitting alone, nursing scotch, looking like a man who hadn't been touched in years. I sat 2 stools away. We didn't speak at first. I just ordered a drink and waited. Eventually, he turned to me and said, "Rough day." I smiled, just enough to bait the hook. "You could say that. My boss slept with my partner. Found out last week." He froze. I watched his eyes shift, confused, calculating, then slowly afraid. "Your partner?" I turned and met his gaze, calm and deliberate. "Yeah, his name's Grayson. Ring a bell?" Boom. Silence. Then he laughed, but it was a hollow, broken laugh. "You're joking." "I wish I was." He looked away, his jaw clenched. He finished his drink in one bitter gulp. "That's funny," he muttered. "She told me Grayson was just a mentor." I leaned in, dropping my voice. "She lied." "Want to see the emails?" That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Claudia's husband. He asked me to forward him everything. I did. I gave him truth. And he promised me fire. I walked into the office on Monday morning, dressed for war. A sharp black blazer, blood-red lipstick, and heels that echoed across the marble floor like warning shots. Every inch of me said, "Don't test me today." Claudia looked up from her glass-walled corner office, a fake smile spreading across her face. Grayson was already at his desk, typing with the kind of false urgency that made me want to throw my coffee in his lap, but I didn't even look at him. I had bigger plans. The night before, I had prepared something so airtight, so strategically brutal, it would make both their heads spin. I'd compiled every stolen slide, every email thread, every Slack message Grayson had sent from my laptop, pretending they were his original thoughts. I had time-stamped screenshots, metadata logs, and an index PDF ready to blow a hole through their carefully built lie. But I wasn't going to the board just yet. No. I was going to let them perform. At 11 o'clock a.m., Claudia called for the weekly strategy huddle. Normally I sat in the corner, invisible but essential. Today, I took the seat directly across from her. She faltered for half a second. Grayson didn't meet my eyes. As Claudia began reciting my ideas from her new initiative deck, I kept my face unreadable, but my hands, they were shaking under the table, not with fear, with focus. Then came the moment. She said, "This strategy came out of our internal think tank sessions, spearheaded by Grayson." I raised my hand. "Actually, I'd like to say something." Everyone turned. Claudia's eyes narrowed. I opened my laptop. "I believe in transparency," I said, voice calm. "And I think we should all see the original drafts of this strategy so we can celebrate real authorship." Then I shared my screen. Silence. One by one, slides filled the meeting room monitors. My original notes, my revisions, the timestamps, the files saved under my name. A voice memo of Grayson reading my words out loud, practicing the pitch. Claudia looked pale. Grayson coughed. I don't know what this is," Claudia started. "Oh, I do." I cut in. "It's plagiarism, theft, and manipulation." Gasps. I didn't wait for the fallout. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out with the words I'd been dying to say. "You built your careers on my back. Now watch me take it all back." The next 48 hours were chaos. By the time I got home that afternoon, my inbox was on fire. Messages from board members, department heads, even people I'd never spoken to in the company. Everyone wanted clarification, confirmation, damage control. Claudia sent me a cold, one-line email. "We'll discuss this internally." Translation: "We're in full panic mode." I didn't reply, because I already had my next move lined up. The next morning, the HR department requested a confidential meeting. I walked in, portfolio in hand, greeted by two representatives who looked like they'd aged a decade overnight. They tried to keep it neutral. "We just want to understand your concerns, Sloan." I didn't blink. "This isn't a concern, it's evidence." And I laid it all out. The timestamps, the Slack messages, the audio file, a printed copy of the presentation Claudia had taken credit for, still bearing my tracked edits, the screenshots showing Grayson accessing my files after hours. Their faces changed. This wasn't an internal misunderstanding. It was a coordinated theft. By PM, the entire leadership team had received a formal report. By PM, Grayson had been locked out of the system. By PM, Claudia posted a message on the company Slack. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, we're making temporary leadership adjustments." And by PM, I was on a video call with the CEO. She'd been distant for years, a figurehead more than a force. But tonight, her tone was clear. "Sloan, we had no idea. This company is built on trust. You're one of our top minds. I want you to know this won't go unanswered." I kept my voice steady. "It already has." I just made sure the answer was public. Claudia called me into her office the next morning. She hadn't looked this disheveled in years. Her usual crisp blazer was wrinkled, makeup half done, and her eyes, normally ice cold and calculating, were frantic. "Sloan, sit." I didn't. "You went behind my back," she said, trying to regain control of the room. "After everything I've done for you?" I let out a quiet laugh. "You mean like stealing my work? Sleeping with Grayson? Undermining me in every board meeting?" Her jaw clenched. "That was personal." "No," I said calmly. "That was reckless. And now it's professional." I handed her the printed copy of my formal complaint. "You violated corporate ethics, misused your authority, and fostered a hostile work environment. You think they're going to believe you over me?" She hissed. "They already did," I said. "The board's meeting this afternoon. You're not invited." She stood up, but I held my ground. "You're finished, Claudia." Her expression crumbled momentarily, but then she straightened. "You're ruthless." "No," I said, turning to walk out. "I'm just tired of being quiet." By the end of the day, Claudia had been placed on indefinite leave. Grayson's contract was suspended pending investigation, and Sloan Mercer was offered the interim creative director role. It wasn't permanent yet, but it was loud, public, poetic, and I hadn't even begun phase 2. The boardroom was silent, dead silent, as I stepped inside. 12 faces turned toward me, all powerful, all calculating, and now, all waiting for me to speak. The head of the board, Meredith Calloway, nodded. Miss Mercer, we've reviewed your documentation and witness statements. We were surprised by the extent of what you uncovered. I took my seat. I could feel the tremble in my fingertips, but I steadied them under the polished mahogany table. Miss Whitmore's conduct violates our conflict of interest policy, internal harassment code, and fiduciary expectations of leadership, I began. I have also included evidence that Grayson Campbell, her husband, was improperly contracted for consulting work under false invoices. Claudia approved them. One of the board members leaned forward. And your goal here, Miss Mercer? Let's be clear, what are you seeking? I met his gaze head on. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to restore integrity to this brand. And if we want to recover the millions we've lost in reputation and revenue, we need leadership that knows how to build, not steal. There was a beat of silence. Then Meredith spoke again. You've got teeth, Sloane. I like that. But this isn't a battlefield. It's a legacy brand. Are you ready to carry that? I didn't flinch. I already have been. I just haven't had the title. Later that night, I stood in my apartment's tiny kitchen, barefoot, clutching the new keycard to Claudia's former office. My phone buzzed. A text from Claudia. You really think this makes you better than me? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new message. This one to our please process final severance. Claudia Whitmore's exit interview is scheduled for Friday. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window. Below, the city hummed like a beast I had finally tamed, and somewhere out there, Grayson was watching this unfold. I hoped it burned, because Phase 2 wasn't about winning. It was about erasure. The smell of polished leather and cold air conditioning hit me as I stepped into Claudia's private office, now mine. Her orchid was still on the windowsill, wilting. I didn't move it. I wanted her to know I'd been here. I wanted the ghost of my presence to linger in everything she once thought was hers. The walls were bare now, stripped of her certificates. The portrait of her and Grayson that once hung above the fireplace gone. I replaced it with something else. A framed photo of the team she tried to destroy, smiling, laughing, real. But today wasn't about office decor. It was about finishing what I started. Claudia arrived 2 minutes late to her exit interview. Deliberate, petty. She walked in wearing sunglasses, though we were indoors, and a trench coat like this was some noir drama. You look tired, she said coolly. I sleep fine, I replied. Guilt doesn't keep me up. She scoffed and took a seat. Across the table, HR manager Linda watched silently. Pen ready. I assume this is the part where you get off on watching me fall? No, I said. This is the part where you face consequences like the rest of us. You violated ethical policies, defrauded the board, and misused your authority. Your position's been dissolved. Your husband's contract is terminated. Your severance has been halved. Her lips curled. You think this company will be better without me? I leaned forward. No, I know it will. When she left, her heels clacked against the marble like gunshots. I exhaled slowly and looked down at my hands. They were still, unshaking. The war was almost over, but something still lingered. Grayson, he'd gone quiet after Claudia's termination, but silence from men like him never meant surrender. It meant retreat and regrouping. I knew he would try something, but this time, I wouldn't just be ready. I'd be waiting. I wasn't prepared for what I saw when I opened the door to Isla's office. Her husband, Patrick, was sitting behind her desk, relaxed, legs casually crossed, a whiskey tumbler in hand, and the company ledger laid out in front of him. He looked up like he'd been expecting me. Sloane, he said, offering a half smile that felt more like a threat than a greeting. Patrick, I replied flatly, stepping in and letting the door shut behind me. Didn't think I'd find you here, especially after what your wife just found out. He raised the glass to his lips, sipped slowly. Isla always overreacts. My hands curled into fists. She walked in on you in our server room, Patrick, with our intern. Allegedly. I narrowed my eyes. Spare me the smug act. I know you were manipulating the books. Isla knows. HR knows. The only reason the board doesn't know yet is because she's trying to protect your daughter. Patrick set down his drink and stood. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know enough. I know your marriage is crumbling and you're trying to secure your own safety net using this company's assets." He laughed. "And what? You're going to be the heroine who saves the day. Sloan Mercer, corporate savior. You think anyone on that board will listen to you? They will when they see this." I dropped a thick folder onto the desk. Isla had handed it to me that morning, trembling but resolute. Every number, every forged invoice, every private message Patrick thought was deleted. "This is your full audit trail. Your digital fingerprints are all over it." His face hardened, color draining. "You wouldn't dare." I stepped closer, voice steady. "I didn't go through a year of being lied to, humiliated, and sidelined to back off now. You destroyed more than a marriage here, Patrick. You made me complicit. You benefited from all of it," he spat. "You got promoted, didn't you? You got your fancy office. At what cost? I thought I was being mentored. I thought Isla had my back. And you pretended to be supportive while you were pulling strings behind our backs." He lunged forward, grabbing the folder. I let him, because the USB drive was already in my pocket, and Isla was already waiting outside the boardroom. "You want to play war, Patrick? Good, because I came armed." He looked at me then, not like a predator sizing up prey, but like a man realizing his house of cards was about to collapse. I didn't wait for his next line. I turned and walked out, heels sharp against the marble. Isla caught my eye as I passed. She nodded. "Let's finish this." Tomorrow the board would meet, and by the time they left that room, Patrick would be stripped of everything he'd stolen, and I would no longer be just an employee trying to survive. I would be the woman who took back her power. The city below pulsed with the low hum of traffic and ambition. From the glass-paneled penthouse office that used to be theirs, I watched the skyline stretch into a twilight horizon. The same skyline I used to stare at while planning marketing campaigns. And now, while watching two people who once tried to erase me publicly unravel. By the time HR finished their confidential investigation into Clara and Derek, their lives had already begun to rot from within. Derek was removed from the board effective immediately. Turns out I wasn't the only woman he had mentored inappropriately. The whispers about Clara had grown louder too. Not just about her marriage, but her ethics, her judgment, her silence. She walked into that same HR office I had once sat in, heels clicking, posture rigid, trying to look like she still ran the place. But everyone knew. The assistant who used to give her coffee didn't even look up. Her allies on the board had stopped returning her calls. Her reputation, polished and pristine, was now stained beyond redemption. I never saw her cry. I think she was too proud for that. But I did see her stare at me across the open floor as she packed up her office. She didn't say anything, just stared, and I met her gaze head on. No bitterness, no gloating, just a quiet confirmation. I had survived. And she hadn't. Derek, meanwhile, had a full-blown meltdown. The kind of man who built his power on fear and charm doesn't handle public humiliation well. The last I heard, his wife had filed for divorce, his assets were frozen in litigation, and the company that once centered around his charisma now shunned his name. As for me, I didn't take Clara's position, though the board offered it. I'd spent too long being someone else's scapegoat to become someone else's puppet. Instead, I took the severance package I negotiated with a few extra zeros tacked on thanks to the documents I kept and walked away clean. 3 months later, I launched my own agency, one where women didn't have to trade silence for survival. I hired people who'd been overlooked, underestimated, and stepped on. And together, we thrived. The building I chose had floor-to-ceiling windows, just like Clara's. I didn't want revenge in the form of power. I wanted it in the form of peace and proof. Proof that I could build something honest, something real, something unbreakable. One afternoon, sipping coffee from my new corner office, I saw Clara step out of a cab across the street. She looked thinner, quieter. She didn't see me, but I saw her. And I smiled. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it's just surviving better than they ever dreamed you would.